Today, I'd like to talk about reclaiming faith. What does that word mean? It can be a bit confusing, I think, for several reasons. Mainly that it tends to be defined within a Christian context, to have faith in God. And here's an image of Amida Buddha from our Kodo. And it's easy for people, I think all people who live in the United States, to maybe think we're having faith in a being or an external reality outside ourselves. But Buddhist faith is quite different from that. And I was able to find a nice YouTube short recently by Richard Dawkins. He is a relatively famous British evolutionary biologist. And he, along with Sam Harris, not Dan Harris, but Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens, often have done presentations and lectures on YouTube about kind of the meaning of faith and how maybe everyday faith is a little bit different. And this everyday faith is the way we use the word faith in Buddhism. It's like having faith in John Wooden if you were a basketball player at UCLA. Bill Walton went to UCLA because he had faith in John Wooden. It's having faith when I went to college that UCLA would do right by me. So it's this kind of faith, an inner knowing, an experiential sense of truth. So Richard Dawkins here gives a short 1-minute talk about faith in the more general terms. The meaning of faith, the definition of faith, has been narrowed so much by Protestant Christianity that we lose these other more nuanced meanings. And I think when I say you have faith in John Wooden, you know what I mean. But when I say faith in Amida Buddha, in the Hondo, suddenly we're in a religious context. And I think we fall back into this more Protestant definition of an external faith that is beyond proof or evidence. So I'd like to share this short clip with you.
Faith as meaning belief in something for which there is no evidence. There are various senses of faith in which scientists do participate. Those branches of science which I don't understand, for example, physics, it could be said, I suppose, that I have faith that physicists understand it better than I do. And so when I say something that physicists tell me, such as that there was nothing before the Big Bang, you're not allowed to talk about the word before in the context of the Big Bang, I sort of have faith that physicists understand enough to be allowed to say that, even though I don't understand why they're allowed to say that. But it's not faith, it's not blind faith, it's not faith in the absence of evidence. It's faith that's based upon confidence in the scientific method, in the scientific peer review process, the fact that I know that.
So watching this, I mean, I could say that I really don't know what the Buddha knows, but I have faith, I have confidence in his words. I trust the tradition. I know that others have achieved awakening and that it's possible. So, I can dedicate my life to Buddhism because I have this inner faith and confidence. And I've also tried it out for myself, and I've been able to experience it and kind of verify the claims personally within my own heart. So the word in our tradition that we use a lot is Xinjin. In the Zen tradition, you'll hear the word Satori. I think that maybe is better well known as a synonym for awakening, but Xinjin is also a synonym for awakening or enlightenment. And in the United States, we tend to translate foreign words into a single word. So Xinjin is actually multivariant, as is most complicated foreign words. We don't actually have a single word that can capture the meaning of Xinjin. And one scholar I've read recently says it's kind of a continuum of words. There's many words that capture this feeling of Xinjin. And he listed 4. He listed confidence, having no doubt, a sense of joy, and a sense of realization. So in a sense, it's kind of an aha moment. So all four of these words together do pretty good at capturing the subtle meaning of Xinjin, and not one of them on here is faith. So I wanted to show you this book. This is a book called Buddhist Theology. And it's one of those books I've talked about before, where it's a collection of essays from many different Buddhist scholars. And it's kind of divided halfway down the middle. Half the scholars think that using Christian terms and using even the word theology makes us part of the religious community, part of the religious worldwide community. It lets us join the debate. But the other half, and I think I'm in the other half, feel like it's out of context. These words don't fit Buddhism. They're highly imbued with Christian meaning, and you just can't get away from it. So I wanted to give you kind of two definitions of theology. One is theology comes from the Greek, the study of God. Christian theology is an attempt to understand God as he is revealed in the Bible. So, actually theology, the other side is saying, is so tightly bound to understanding of Christianity that it makes it very difficult for Buddhists to join that debate. There's too much baggage. It's the wrong context. So the other side would say the study of religious faith, practice, and experience, but especially the study of God and God's relation to the world. So I think the side that thinks we could join this conversation using common religious terms in the United States are aiming to generalize the term theology to mean religious faith, practice, and experience in whatever tradition you're in. I just find for myself it's very difficult to do. And even within the ministers within the BCA, about half think that this is a worthy endeavor, and the other half thinks it's fraught with peril. So we'll talk about maybe 4 different ways of approaching this. But I wanted to show you some of the words that we use on the left-hand side in our temples that I think are confusing, not just to newcomers, but to lifelong Buddhists. We all live in a Western Christian culture, and these words are very heavily laden with Christian undertones. And I'd like to suggest maybe better words on the right. And again, no single word suffices. But rather than faith, we just use the foreign term Xinjin, or one of those 4 suggestions. We often use the word evil person. The word evil is a really, really big word, and if you use it, you got to be very careful. But in our tradition, we might use the word deluded, ignorant, not seeing things clearly. Sometimes we use the word salvation. I think liberation might be a better choice. Sometimes I hear the word grace being used. We're in Amita's grace. This term in general means unearned merit, or something that's gifted to you. And when I heard those 2 definitions, it really helped me. Being embraced by true reality itself is unearned merit. It's gifted to us. It's nothing we did to deserve it, and yet we have it. It's our birthright. Sometimes we use the word prayer, and gasho looks a little bit like prayer already. So we could use the word a vow or a wish or an aspiration. A little on the lighter side at OCBC, we used to have an organ that I found very triggering. Every time I heard an organ and we sang a gatha, all I could think about was singing hymns at a church. And so we now have a piano. And just simple things like this really made a big difference for me. But to be fair, this word faith is not used only in Jodo Shinshu. I think sometimes Jodo Shinshu sounds like we're on an island away from Buddhism in general, and that we emphasize faith, which is true. We really emphasize faith. And sometimes we hear the words faith alone. But faith is something common in Buddhism if we look at Buddhist definitions. So this is a book, Faith and Devotion. in Theravada Buddhism, which is the older original Buddhism in Southeast Asia. But there's also a more modern book that just came out recently by Sharon Salzberg. We read this in our book club. I saw the title and I kind of got a little bit of a chill down my spine. But then I read the tagline and I thought it was so good. Trusting your own deepest experience. That would be a Buddhist definition of faith. It's something that you feel to be true. You're compelled, in a sense. So on the internet, I Googled about, and I found an article she wrote on Tricycle Magazine, and that's the URL down below, Sharon Salzberg on Faith. And I believe the title of her essay was Reclaiming Faith. And this is an interview with Vipassana. This is a style of Theravada meditation teacher, Sharon Salzberg, and an expert from her new book, Faith. So first she asks the question, how? How does this work in Buddhism? And I wanted to mention, we're going to go through three kinds of faith. A lot of the teachings in Buddhism are enumerated, like 1, 2, 3. Everything's very discrete and in a list form. It's perfect for PowerPoint. But the theory is the Buddha didn't really talk in bullets and talking points. This was done to make the teachings easier to memorize when it was an oral tradition. So sometimes it comes off a little analytic and dry, but this was a way to make memorization a bit easier for the monks. So I'm sure when he taught this, it was a little warmer, a little bit more engaging. But it says here, in the Theravada tradition, there are three kinds of faith. The first is bright faith, which is like falling in love, perhaps, with Buddhism or another spiritual tradition. Usually a teacher or a text inspires us, lifting us out of the narrow confines of our world. We have a sense of energizing possibility. But bright faith is just the beginning. It's not meant to deny the intellect. So in a sense, it's not blind faith. It's not blind faith. But this initial euphoria has to be followed up by something deeper. I've told this story many times. The people that come to my wife's yoga class into our Buddhist church and are super enthusiastic and they want to come and they're going to do this for the rest of their life and it's the most important thing they've ever experienced, those are the people that usually don't come back. Their expectations are too high. They're wildly unrealistic. They want their life to change in a week. And they usually don't come back. So this bright faith, this initial euphoria, has to be have a more long-term, stronger foundation. In fact, the only way to get to the second stage, to what is called verified faith, is by knowing the truth of something for ourselves. We have to investigate the very person or thing or teaching that initially inspired our faith in order to ground our inspiration in personal and direct experience. That means testing the teachings through our own practice and learning how to question all that we've been told. Otherwise, our faith will not mature into verified faith. So we're moving from bright to verified, which is what Richard Dawkins has. As verified faith develops, it becomes abiding or unwavering faith. With abiding faith, we know a truth so deeply that it's not something we even think about anymore. We are it. So this is where it becomes part of your life. You can't help but practice. In a sense, I think this would be the definition for Xinjin. It's this unwavering confidence. It's never turning back, never falling back, never being in a stage of retrogression, always making progress. So this idea that we become it, all truth can be found in the Beatles. This is what happens when you're a musician. You become your instrument. B.B. King would hear a melody in his head and it would come out his guitar. He didn't memorize notes. That's improv. So I found a really nice short clip of George Harrison discussing Ringo Starr. And he said the two of them had something in common that I found striking. They never practiced. They got to a point in their musicianship where they never had to practice. They heard the song and they just played what needed to be played. I practiced all the time the guitar, and I was not very good. I never got to this unwavering, abiding faith where I am the guitar. So I would like to play this short clip to you about George Harrison discussing this kind of faith in their music.
On your album is also Ringo Starr, and you said, he is like myself with the guitar. What did you mean by that?
Well, we've grown, for so many years, grown up together, and as a drummer, I know Ringo is a great drummer, but he is bad, he doesn't practice. But it doesn't seem to matter. He just picks up the drumsticks, and for my songs, he's very good because he listened to the song once, and he knows exactly what to play. He was the kind of drummer who never likes drum solos. So he just keeps good time, and he instinctively knows when there's a little piece that needs a fill. And it's the same with me. You know, people call me a guitar player, and in a way I'm a guitar player, but I never practice. There's years and years in my life where I never pick the guitar up except just to make a record. But I know I could be quite good, but I don't practice enough.
So anyway, I just thought that was amazing. It reminds me a little bit about the Pure Land tradition. They listen, right? They listen deeply, and they know instinctively what needs to be done. He said that he was a very bad drummer because he didn't practice. Well, Jodo Shinshu Buddhists could be called very bad Buddhists. We don't practice in that sense. We're everyday people. We become our practice. Our spiritual and secular lives merge into one, and it becomes something effortless that we do every day. And when that happens, the question about awakening doesn't really become an issue, because you're on your destination. Your destination's assured. You can relax, you can exhale, and you can live your life every day. So where does faith come from, she asks. Faith is a part of being alive. It's about being human. The better question is, how is faith nurtured? How is it awakened in us? Sometimes it comes just because someone else has faith in us. Other times, wisdom brings faith. We see over and over again, for instance, that our lives are not under our dominion or control. She goes on to say, we may despair at first, but when we realize and accept that we are not in control, we can also let go. We can acknowledge the faith it takes to step into the unknown. The wisdom of our realization awakens that faith. So this is a very different Buddhist tradition from ours, and yet this language resonates quite well within our own tradition. And I mentioned grace earlier in my list because I knew this slide was coming. Is the answer to that question grace? Sometimes it is a moment of grace. And patience, as Trungpa Rinpoche said, he's a Tibetan Buddhist, is grace. Something happens when we don't resist, when we don't hate ourselves for what we're experiencing. Our heart opens and we realize we're not alone in our suffering. Even the suffering we begin to see is a vehicle for a larger sense of connection to all of life. Once we have that, we have faith. So this is the meaning of Namo Amida Butsu, opening ourselves up and receiving all of life as a precious, unmerited gift. So I wanted to give you one more example of faith. This is the way we mean it every day, and it's the way we mean it in Buddhism. This year in the NBA Finals, the Milwaukee Bucks were ranked #1 in the East Coast, and Miami was 8th. They were the worst out of 8 teams. Milwaukee was the best. And Miami won the series 4-1. This was the second year in a row after winning the championship 3 years ago that Milwaukee lost again in the first round. And there was a reporter at the press conference after this fourth loss in the fifth game, who asked the center, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I had to think about that for a second. He's the center. And this reporter asked him the same question this year that he asked him last year about being a failure, that you lost in the first round 2 years in a row. And the answer he gave was amazing. He lives in the world of process. He lives in the world of faith and confidence. So I'd like you to listen to this. I thought this was one of the best things I've ever heard. Very deep, very thoughtful.
I just asked Bud the exact same question, but I'm curious for you. Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. Okay, because I'm not that up. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay. Do you get the promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, I don't know, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success, you know. And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it, you know. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure. That's what you're telling me. No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful. Some days you're not. Some days it's your turn. Some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's gonna win. And this year, somebody else is gonna win. Simple as that. We're gonna come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball, you know, and hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures? No, it was not. It was steps to it, you know, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one. You know, sorry that I didn't want to make it personal, because you asked me the same question last year, and last year I was in the right mind space to answer the question back.
So I think Giannis waited a whole year to answer this question properly. But like he said, it's the wrong question. That's the wrong question. And there's no failure in life, right? There's no failure in basketball, and there's no failure in life. It's a path that we learn and we move forwards. It's a common assumption that faith deepens as we are taught more about what to believe in. But in Buddhism, on the contrary, faith grows only as we question what we are told, as we try teachings. By putting them into practice to see if they really make a difference in our own lives. The Buddha himself insisted, don't believe anything just because I've said it. Don't believe anything just because an elder or someone you respect has said it. Put it into practice and see for yourself if it's true. When I first encountered the Dharma, Sharon Salzberg says, I felt a growing excitement at what I was learning about the relationship of the body and the mind, about the power of concentration, about the laws of nature and change. But many of these new ideas, though they stuck with me as true, were not yet my own experience. I believed what I was hearing, but hadn't proven the truth of it to myself. To move from floating world of bright faith to the more solid ground of verified faith, I would have to ask questions, find a voice, explore the teachings for myself. Rather than asking me to adopt a set of customs and beliefs, Buddhism has led me over and over again back to the even more decided challenge of finding out what is true for myself. So I wanted to share this with you. Faith is a good word, but we have to make sure we really understand it when we use it. I think it's difficult to do. There's different ways of approaching this problem. One is, one minister said that it's okay to use these types of words in an interfaith context. It would work if you're in a meeting with other religious world leaders. But another big problem I hadn't thought of is if we use these traditional Christian terms with millennials who have no spiritual background, then we're trying to explain Buddhism to them, which they know nothing about, and we're using Christian terms that they also know nothing about. So I found that very interesting. Most young people don't have a Christian spiritual background when they come to Buddhism. So if we use Christian terms, that really isn't helpful. But it would be good to use these terms maybe in an interfaith environment where we could find common ground and discuss. But, you know, even I'm a math major, I mean, you really have to define your terms before you begin to have a discussion. And I guess maybe that's the middle road that I'm looking for. So I want to thank you very much for listening to my talk, and I'd like to close with Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.